Welcome, everybody, yet another episode of the Wrestling vs. the World podcast. If y'all are enjoying your day, awesome. If not, well, no pun intended. Let's see if this episode's going to make it seem like it's the best podcast in the world. Anyway, so a lot of us remember 2011 for one primary thing, and that's mostly CM Punk's rise throughout that year, from going from a guy who wasn't really doing a whole lot at the beginning, in a way, to suddenly becoming one of the top guys. But the thing we have, I think everybody's forgotten, is that 2011 wasn't the perfect year for him due to one thing: his booking. So this episode, where I'm going to cover his entire 2011 run, explaining how he did have his high points, but there were issues along the way. So we're going to start off with the Royal Rumble. First pay-per-view of the year, and this is generally how we're going to go. It's primarily going to be bringing up pay-per-views and some stuff in between. He started off by costing Randy Orton his WWE Championship match against The Miz, and then later on in the Royal Rumble match, he lasted about 35 minutes with 7 eliminations, which I believe was the most amount of eliminations in the match altogether. So, starts strong in the year, and his reason that he explained later on for attacking Randy Orton and costing him the WWE Championship was dating all the way back to Unforgiven 2008, when Randy Orton cost him the World Heavyweight Championship, that pay-per-view, so he's finally able to get his revenge, even though it took a couple years. You fast forward to the next pay-per-view, at the Elimination Chamber Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. He was the last man eliminated within the match by John Cena, and apparently all these eliminations were by pinfall. That's a bit of a surprise. But he was the last man eliminated in the Chamber match to determine who would be the number one contender to the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 27. So he did not get his chance to become WWE Champion. And I believe, if memories are... Yeah, even right here it says he was originally eliminated by Randy Orton, but then the anonymous Raw general manager announced that CM Punk would re-enter the match. But there's a problem there because he still did not win, and I guess the reason being that his pod was not able to be opened. So I guess that was their explanation for why he's not getting a shot. So he started having the feud with Randy Orton, and in the build of WrestleMania 27, Randy Orton took out all members of the Nexus, so it was just down to Randy Orton and CM Punk one-on-one. CM Punk tried going for a springboard clothesline and got caught midair to the RKO to lose. The feud would not end, as it would still go on a little bit longer to Extreme Rules. These two actually opened the pay-per-view in a last man standing match. New Nexus, which I'll talk about in just a moment, was banned from ringside, and Randy Orton got a big RKO for the win to conclude the feud. Now, so to quickly recap up here, CM Punk did start right before this as the new leader of the Nexus when he suddenly attacked John Cena after finally being recovered from a hip injury, got out of the commentary table, kicked away Barrett out of the group, and started being the new leader of the Nexus. Threw his power around, lost Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel because they went over to the core on SmackDown, which is not a good idea. But it seemed like this was going to work for him, but then as time went on, things kind of got a little more distant with the Nexus. Even around this time, it wasn't really that great, because again, everybody was getting punched in the head and couldn't be around CM Punk for the matches with Randy Orton. So already, by this point, the Nexus was not doing so well, and Randy Orton pretty much won this entire feud with CM Punk. Both pay-per-view matches, boom, beat CM Punk. And I think the only one-up thing that I can remember CM Punk even doing to Randy Orton was the whole thing about attacking him outside of his tour bus and then blowing a kiss to his on-screen wife, trying to represent his then-wife, Samantha, who was staying there in the tour bus watching everything, kind of blowing her a kiss, like, howdy, honey, or whatever the fuck he's doing. So he's already lost this feud. You go on to the next pay-per-view, Over the Limit, and all he did, technically, was just team up with Mason Ryan and fail to win the WWE Tag Team Championships against Big Show and Kane. And plus, Mason Ryan wasn't really setting the world on fire, but it was forgettable. So then around this time, like I said, stuff with the Nexus was starting to die down. The group was eventually going to disband. And then next pay-per-view, Capital Punishment, he defeated Rey Mysterio in a sudden one-on-one match. Like, I don't remember there being much of a build. After this, I believe he won a triple threat match later on. I'm reading through my notes. Yep, he won a triple threat match on an episode of Raw, like just shortly after this. Triple threat match against Rey Mysterio and Alberto Del Rio to become the number one contender to the WWE Championship. After this, he cut a promo on the microphone revealing that on the night of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which was July 17th, I believe. Yep, July 17th. His contract expired at midnight, so his last day would be the night where he challenges John Cena for the WWE Championship and declared he would leave the WWE with the WWE Championship. Now, there was also truth into all this, as CM Punk's contract was legitimately expiring, and he was looking to leave the company due to ongoing frustrations. So they're doing... The weird thing was, this build suddenly just happened out of nowhere because, like I mentioned, before this, stuff with the Nexus was not going so well. He completely lost the feud to Randy Orton, and then all of a sudden he's number one contender to the WWE Championship. That's kind of iffy there. Like, usually you have a bit of a win streak to build up number one contender. Instead, it was just out of nowhere. So then, we remember in the build of this, the infamous Pipebomb segment, the work shoot that set the world, quote-unquote, set the world on fire, depending on what stories you believe. Then in kayfabe, Vince McMahon suspended CM Punk, but then John Cena vouched to get his suspension reversed. But then it was announced that the title match was going to happen, but if Cena lost the title and CM Punk leaves with the WWE Championship, then Cena would be fired. There was also that contract segment signing that happened right before Money in the Bank, where Vince McMahon tried to persuade CM Punk to stay with the company. And I believe you could probably point that speech or that segment to where CM Punk pretty much turned babyface. Because, like, Vince was telling the crowd, I don't give a damn what you people want. Then CM Punk declaring that was the problem, Vince. So, like, saying that he doesn't give a damn about what the people want. And he's like, you didn't expect CM Punk to suddenly say something like that. So, that segment essentially turned him babyface, even though he made a bit of an off-remark, bit of comments towards John Cena face-to-face before getting punched. So then we finally get to the pay-per-view, and on the day of the pay-per-view, 3 things happened. First of all, CM Punk, backstage, signed a contract during the pay-per-view, so he decided to stick with the company. Second of all, for the final time, on his nameplate, it would list him as the leader of the Nexus, because this would pretty much be the last night where the Nexus was known as a faction, because it would be an old more. He was also wearing a brand new t-shirt. And third of all, he would become the WWE Champion in front of his own home crowd, well, home crowd / hometown area, depending on the description people want to give. It happened in Rosemont, but he's a Chicago guy, but they pretty much kind of is like Chicago's backyard. Won the championship, stopped Alberto Del Rio from cashing in on him, blew a kiss to Vince McMahon, and ran off in the crowd with the WWE Championship. So CM Punk in storyline was no longer with WWE, but in reality he was still with the company and was the new WWE Champion. However, it seemed like he was going to be gone, but they kind of rushed this feud, or this next appearance, because the following week, after John Cena defeated Rey Mysterio to become the brand new WWE Champion, when they thought there was no WWE Champion anymore, CM Punk made his return, came out to the song Cult of Personality, and we had now 2 WWE Champions. So, at SummerSlam, it was made a unification match to determine the undisputed WWE Champion. CM Punk, John Cena, Triple H as special guest referee to decide a winner. CM Punk got the victory after hitting the GTS to John Cena, but Cena's foot was on the rope, Triple H did not see it. And then this is where things kind of get rocky for CM Punk and his booking. Now, granted, there was interference caused this, but it's still something to note. Afterwards, Kevin Nash attacked CM Punk, dropped him with a jackknife powerbomb. This prompted Alberto Del Rio to come down to the ring, cash in Money in the Bank, and become the new WWE Champion after hitting a Shining Wizard to be the quote-unquote undisputed champion, even though they dropped that moniker a bit later. So, things were a bit iffy, and this was kind of where his momentum really started to die down despite being white hot. So after this, CM Punk started this whole program with Kevin Nash and Triple H, and the whole thing was CM Punk believed that Triple H and Kevin Nash were in cahoots to stop him from being WWE Champion because Kevin Nash said that somebody sent a text message from Triple H's phone to his telling him to stick the winner of the WWE Championship match at SummerSlam. But then Triple H is still trying to, since he's the on-screen COO, he's still trying to claim his innocence, saying he has absolutely no idea what's going on. And essentially at Night of Champions, as I mentioned in one of the 3 episodes of the 3-part series about matches being affected by cards subject to change tagline in WWE, we had the announcement that it was going to be CM Punk versus Kevin Nash at Night of Champions. However, the same night that it was announced, they completely dropped it, and instead it went to Triple H versus CM Punk. It was made a no disqualification match. And you mostly remember this feud because of the back and forth promos, which were pretty entertaining. But one of the big stipulations they also added is that if Triple H loses, he's no longer the COO of WWE, a title that he only had for 2 months at this point. So they honestly booked themselves into a corner with this one when you think about it. It's like you either have CM Punk win and Triple H loses his on-screen authority role there, or you have Triple H win and it really messes in for no purpose and it squashes CM Punk's momentum. And sadly, we got the latter of the two. Even though Kevin Nash tried to get involved, CM Punk took 2 pedigrees altogether and he lost. So he got pinned down the middle in the ring. And this was honestly not a good decision. This was even something that CM Punk still held against Triple H. As we heard in the Art of Wrestling podcast, he brought up with him right the day he finally left WWE once and for all back after the Royal Rumble. Because, I mean, it didn't make sense. Triple H was pretty much semi-retired at this point. He came out of retirement/semi-retirement just to beat him, and there was no point. Like, CM Punk never got his win back or anything. It didn't progress anything. So they're still doing the whole back and forth thing with Triple H and Kevin Nash. Eventually, Nash gets on-screen fired, but then CM Punk moved on to Hell in a Cell because he lost the championship due to Alberto Del Rio's contract or Money in the Bank contract cash-in at SummerSlam, but did not get his contractually obligated rematch as he was supposed to get. Now, Alberto Del Rio was also owed that because he just lost the championship to John Cena at Night of Champions. So we have John Cena, WWE Champion, Alberto Del Rio and CM Punk both needing their contractually obligated WWE Championship rematch clause to be invoked. So this makes a triple threat Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell. Sadly, this was another issue, because at the end, John Cena was locked out of the cell for attacking Ricardo Rodriguez. Alberto Del Rio locked the door behind him, hit CM Punk with a lead pipe, and CM Punk took the pin. So you had 3 pay-per-views in a row where CM Punk loses, but 2 back-to-back, because you could still put an asterisk by Money in the Bank because that whole concept. So it was 2 pay-per-views in a row since losing the WWE Championship where he lost for whatever reason. And of course, after that, we still remember after the show or after the match, the Hell in a Cell was raised for a moment. Cena got in the ring, brawl, cell lowered. Awesome Truth does the attack, arrested. Triple H gets involved in the brawl. So this then leads to what goes on at Vengeance. Alberto Del Rio would defend the WWE Championship in a last-man standing match against John Cena because John Cena cashes in his rematch clause, while CM Punk and Triple H team together now that it's proven that Triple H and Kevin Nash were not in cahoots. It was all BS on Kevin Nash's part to take on Awesome Truth because of what happened to Hell in a Cell. Vengeance, and thankfully this tweet of mine actually got on the Sportskeeda website, so thank you, Sportskeeda. This one, Kevin Nash attacks Triple H, and CM Punk takes the pin from Awesome Truth for whatever reason. 3 pay-per-views in a row where CM Punk takes the pin. And again, it's honestly for no reason, because what came of this? Nothing. Because Triple H, they were like having him go with the feud against Kevin Nash. Awesome Truth, you look at what happened next pay-per-view at Survivor Series against Cena and Rock, and how disastrous that was for both of those. And by both of those, I mean Cena and Rock having to work with that against that tag team for no reason. So it's like, what was the purpose of CM Punk taking the pin again? Like, Miz and Truth weren't going to become tag team champions. In fact, right after Survivor Series, the team broke up because R-Truth legitimately got suspended for violating the wellness policy. So that pin happened for no reason. So then they try regaining momentum with Punk because now that Cena was moving on to teaming with The Rock to go against Awesome Truth, because they got involved in the match at Vengeance, costing him the WWE Championship match against Alberto Del Rio. That left CM Punk with nothing to do except to challenge Alberto Del Rio for the WWE Championship at Survivor Series in Madison Square Garden, which he got after making Alberto Del Rio agree to the title match, like title defense, after locking him in the Anaconda Vice. Which again is a bit of an iffy move, as explained to what happened a few months prior. He goes on a bit of a noticeable losing streak of sorts, like in terms of big matches, and then all of a sudden he's getting a title shot. Doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's just like when AJ Styles lost at WrestleMania 32 to Chris Jericho, and then the next night he's number 1 contender to the WWE Championship against Roman Reigns. It's like a handful of losses, then all of a sudden number 1 contender. It's like you usually don't build up a number 1 contender starting by a losing streak of sorts before then. So all of a sudden he's number 1 contender to the WWE Championship just because. And of course, at Survivor Series, Madison Square Garden, he gets announced to the ring by legendary announcer Howard Finkel. Rest in peace, Howard Finkel, by the way. And after getting the Anaconda Vice on Del Rio taps. CM Punk begins his 434-day title reign with this title win. And of course celebrates in the crowd. Now of course he would have his first pay-per-view defense the following pay-per-view at TLC. The first WWE pay-per-view to not have John Cena since I believe Cyber Sunday in 2008. Because I remember he had a match at SummerSlam 2008 against Batista and then came back at Survivor Series against Cena or Jericho. So this is the first time in 3 years we did not have John Cena on a pay-per-view, and this WWE Championship match actually main evented. Now originally it started off, as mentioned also in the 3-part series of the podcast that I did about matches that didn't happen as originally planned or advertised. It was originally starting off with CM Punk versus The Miz in TLC match, then Del Rio got added as a triple threat, and then Cena added as a fatal 4-way, but then Cena right afterwards gave up his spot so that Zack Ryder could get a chance to go for the U.S. title match, or U.S. Championship at TLC. So once again, it was reverted back to a triple threat match for TLC, which CM Punk won despite getting handcuffed to one of the turnbuckle posts. Still got himself handcuffed, got himself free, and managed to climb the ladder after fighting off both Miz and Del Rio to pry the WWE Championship from the ceiling and retain his championship. So, you look at this year, yes, this began him starting to become white hot with the quote-unquote Summer of Punk, but there were issues with booking that really messed with how white hot he was. Because like I said, when he became WWE Champion #1 contender at Money in the Bank, it happened out of nowhere because, like I said, he lost the Elimination Chamber match, lost 2 back-to-back one-on-one pay-per-view matches against Randy Orton, won some random match against Rey Mysterio at Capital Punishment, and then he's suddenly a #1 contender, which did not make sense because you didn't really build him back up to a proper level just by beating Rey Mysterio on a pay-per-view, especially after losing the matches against Randy Orton in the Elimination Chamber. Then he becomes WWE Champion, he's Unified Champion, he loses the title for the cash-in, loses Triple H for no real reason at Night of Champions, he takes the pin at Hell in a Cell, and he's the one to take the pin for whatever reason, the tag match of Vengeance. So really, yes, he got white hot because people were talking about him because of the stuff he said in the Pipebomb, and it got him white hot, but they honestly cooled off against him. But like with those booking decisions with losses, yeah, he became WWE Champion at Survivor Series, but those 3 consecutive pay-per-view losses outside of SummerSlam honestly messed up his momentum of sorts. It was like he wasn't as white hot as he was in the leading into Survivor Series because of that stuff. If he was continuing on a winning streak or something, or the title win happened sooner to begin the title reign and everything, then yes, it would have been proper. But for some reason, they just decided, hey, let's go from white hot to make him a little bit cold. I mean, almost as cold as the refrigerator that you put the WWE Championship in after Money in the Bank. But anyway, let me know what you all thought in the comment section below about what your thoughts were about CM Punk's run throughout 2011. Because, again, this run wasn't as perfect as people think when you look at his booking. I mean, yeah, I think his booking would be a little bit better in 2012 because of the length of the title run and how dominant it was and everything, but 2011 wasn't perfect because you have to look beyond just the Pipebomb promo. But as I was saying, let me know what you all thought in the comment section below about CM Punk's run throughout 2011. I mean, you gotta remember, there was more to that year for CM Punk than just the Pipebomb in the beginning of the 434-day title run because nothing was really consistent when you look at it. So let me know what you all thought in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, remember, leave a like, follow, subscribe, depending on what service you're listening to this episode to. Bell turned on if you're watching this episode on YouTube. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Thanks for listening, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, and good day, everybody.